they'll start off and they'll struggle, or maybe they'll hit something and they'll gain a little bit of traction, but then they hit the point, and this seems to be the common theme. You hit a point at which you just don't ever really break past it. Maybe in your business it's $1 million a year or $15 million a year, but that was kind of the case where we are now. Is 15 million was like that thing. It's like watching the Dow hit 27 and come back, and 27 and come back to 25, and at some point it's going to bust past. But people, I think a lot of times what limits people is not just systems that are in place in their business, it's themselves. It's their own mentality about it. And maybe they need help, but just getting a vision to see something greater. How do I go further than where I am now? And it's going to take more people. It's going to take better ideas, obviously. But the point is, I think you got to begin to see it and see a vision for it before it comes to pass. I mean, our imagination is a powerful thing. I mean, I could ask you, how many windows do you have in your house? You don't know the answer to that, but you could tell me.
I do, 30, because my kids wash them, and I give them $1 per window.
But most people, they'll visualize their house, and they can get in your mind right now. I can picture your house right now, and I can go from room to room, and I can count them. Of course, I think you've done some work to your house, so I don't know what it looks like. But you can go from room to room, and you can count the windows, and you're doing that with your imagination. We have to take our imagination and begin to visualize something good, visualize where we want to be, how we want our lives to look. And it's not just about money. You and I have talked about this. You're like, well, would I rather do $250,000 a year in personal income and have all this free time, or do I want to do $1 million a year in personal income and be just balls to the wall, strapped down? I can't spend any time with my kids. I mean, I can tell you this, I want to go to Disney with my kids. Right. I want to be able to go to the beach. I want to be able to be on the weekends and be with them. I don't want to be just all the time working. Where's the joy in that? The purpose of money, the purpose of it is to use it to get the things we want and to provide freedom.
Well, and it's not always about just increasing your business to double or stuff like that.
Right.
Case in point, I'm working with a company right now. They're a restaurant business. They got about 15 different locations, and they have the system down for their restaurant. They know everything. They're fine. But where the trick is in the restaurant business is they don't own their location.
Yeah.
And so then they're having to give a percentage of their sales up for that location, which, could be 10% or more sometimes, depending on the location and, what the maintenance is and different things like that. And so now what they're doing, they have 15 stores. They're going to build all of their own locations out. And so to think about that, one, that's going to be savings, to the bottom line, because now they're going to own, so they're not going to have to pay that rent once they're paid off or stuff like that. But now they also have greater asset. In 15 years, 7 that we just talked about, where it should be able to pay that off. In 7 years, they'll be able to have that as all assets now, where they could borrow more money to build more locations or buildings or. And so I think there's lots of different ways to think about how to increase your company. If it's through real estate or employees or online, it's not limited to just one idea.
That's true. That's very true. McDonald's, when they started out, McDonald's was a hamburger joint, and when I say McDonald's, that's what everybody thinks of. But corporate McDonald's is not flipping burgers. They're leasing franchises. They own real estate. So McDonald's corporately, I'm pretty sure this is accurate, they own the locations, they own the real estate, they own the building, but there's a guy that owns that franchise. So he owns the operation, and then he's paying McDonald's rent on the building and even paying them a franchise fee of all the sales. So McDonald's corporately, they're not even into the burger business.
Right. They're in the
real estate business.
They're in the container business, because you also have to buy
their
all
products.
of their products, right, which is paper goods and
so they're not, there's all this connection, and yes, these employees work for McDonald's, but they also work for the franchise. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on, but the point is, how they've really built their wealth is real estate, rental property, franchise fees. That's how they've really built their value. And then, somebody comes along and buys the Chick-fil-A or owns the Chick-fil-A franchise or owns the McDonald's franchise, and they're making a good living, but their main thrust is, we got to serve these customers hamburgers and chicken sandwiches, and McDonald's isn't tied into that mode every day.
Well, and I know, I was just talking to the guy the other day, and he's talking about retiring in the next couple of years, and he's like, I don't know that I'll be able to sell my business. Mm-hmm. But he thinks if he were to sell his big business package deal with the building and owner finance the building,
right.
Charge a little bit more for the building because they are getting the business too. They make monthly payments and then they stop. He still owns the building, different
That's
things like that. And, it's interesting to me how we can set up retirement or how we can set up or create wealth through just making a couple little tweaks in our business and how our mindset is.
It's true. I'll say this about leasing. We've entertained the idea of leasing, leasing office space, leasing a building, and all these kind of things. And I was talking about, some of these companies, these big companies, they'll do really long-term leases. They'll do 15, 20-year leases. And the guy I was talking to was like, no, they won't do that. It'd be 5 years. Well, I just found out over here at the mall, the mall is leasing part of the mall to a government entity, like Child Services or something, 15-year lease.
Right.
And so, the bigger the corporations, even government, they'll just lease that space forever, man. And you're sitting there and you own this cash flow king that's just bringing money to you, and all you got to do is just have the ownership of it. And try to pay it off as quickly as you can. That's something I've got to kind of revamp in my rentals. I've got them on a little bit longer term than I want them on because I was focusing more on having the cash flow available. But now I'm in a point where I'm saying, let's get them paid off, so that we can have that money, because time just moves so quickly. I mean, when I was in my 20s, it didn't seem that way. But now that I'm pushing 40, I can see 50s around the corner.
Right. It's coming quick.
And what do I want to be doing at 50? I mean, do I want to be doing the same thing, or do I want to be able to, if I want to quit working and I want to focus on just some real estate investments or whatever, I want to be able to do that. So,
have you guys as a company thought about building out warehouses or other locations?
We've talked about it, and something we were talking about it this week, but even in talking to you now, I'm starting to entertain the idea of going, well, maybe instead of renting a space for these 3 or 4 people, what if we just built I can tell you this, a little 2,500 or 5,000 square foot metal building with an office in it? Man, I mean, that's valuable. Mm-hmm. And you put your employees there and let them work. But then when you get ready to pull out and move out, you could sell it if you wanted to. You could lease it to somebody else. You're building value. And that's what you want to build. I mean, the problem when you have business is you can have all this money turning, but if you're not ever making a plan with it, it'll just come in your hands and go right out. Come in and go right out because you're paying for all your employees and all the materials and everything that goes on. And you're catching a little bit along the way to pay your light bill and buy your groceries and maybe take some vacations. But next thing you'll know, you'll be 10 years in business and I don't have anything saved up.
Right.
I mean, that's very common.
Well, I have a lot of companies. Then the guy says, I thought at the end of the year I'd have $100,000, $200,000 cash sitting in the bank, and I'm
right.
like, who told you that?
Right. My dad. At the end of the year, we do the financials, and I pull it up, and I'm like, this is how much we made for the year. Dad, he goes, well, where's that money?
Right.
I'm like, well, you got to understand it. It doesn't work that way. You may show that profit, but that doesn't mean it's literal cash in your bank. It's, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And if you don't stick up to a plan or have some kind of place that you're putting it, you got to tell money where to go, or money's going to tell you where it's going. It just has legs.
Yeah, I mean, I just got $300,000, and I literally wrote every dollar.
$299,000.
Right.
Well,
and
hun,
people are like, what? You got $300,000?
We can go to Orlando for a weekend, But I know it's crazy how that is. I mean, but it's cash flow. They say cash is king. Cash flow is king, man. I mean, the way that cash moves in and out, that really is the thing that dictates whether or not the doors of your business are open.
Well, and that's what I